I died at 35 in a car accident that wasn't really an accident. My husband Zhang Hao was driving. His phone rang with his first love's ringtone. The special one he'd set years ago that he thought I didn't know about. And when I asked him not to answer while driving, he backhanded me so hard my head hit the window. He answered the call. "Xiaoyu, I'm sorry, give me 1 second." Those were the last words I heard before the truck hit us on my side. Zhang Hao survived with minor injuries. I died instantly, my final thought being how much he must have hated me to hit me for interrupting a call with the woman he actually loved. My name is Lin Xia, and I spent 12 years being Zhang Hao's second choice. The woman he married because Xiaoyu chose someone wealthier, the wife he resented for not being her, the placeholder he blamed for every unhappiness in his life. Every time Xiaoyu called, texted, or needed something, I was expected to disappear. And when I dared to exist during those moments, I paid the price. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in a morgue. I was 23, standing in a hotel ballroom at my university's graduation ceremony, watching Zhang Hao across the room as he stared at Xiaoyu dancing with her new boyfriend, the wealthy heir she'd chosen over him. This was the night everything started in my previous timeline. The night Zhang Hao, heartbroken and drunk, had asked me to dance. The night I'd felt special because the campus prince finally noticed me. The night I'd mistaken his need for a rebound as genuine interest. This time, I knew exactly what that dance would cost me. I watched Zhang Hao drain another glass of wine, his eyes never leaving Xiaoyu. She looked radiant in a red dress, laughing at something her boyfriend said, completely unaware of or unconcerned with the man whose heart she'd shattered 3 months earlier. In my previous life, I'd felt sorry for Zhang Hao. I'd seen his pain and wanted to heal it. I'd thought that if I loved him enough, completely enough, he'd eventually love me back. I'd been catastrophically wrong. Zhang Hao started walking toward me. That same determined expression I remembered from my previous timeline. This was the moment he'd ask me to dance, would hold me just a little too close, would whisper that I was beautiful and kind and everything Xiaoyu wasn't. I turned and walked out of the ballroom before he could reach me. The night air was cool, refreshing after the stuffiness inside. I heard footsteps behind me but didn't turn around. "Lin Xia, wait." I stopped but didn't face him. "What is it, Zhang Hao? I saw you leaving. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Just tired. I'm heading home." "Let me walk you." "No thank you. I'm meeting someone." This was a lie. In my previous timeline, I'd been alone and lonely, which had made me vulnerable to Zhang Hao's attention. This time, I needed him to think I had other options, other people, other priorities. "Oh, a boyfriend?" "Just a friend. Good night, Zhang Hao." I walked away, feeling his confused gaze on my back. In my previous timeline, we'd danced that night, then gone for late-night food, then started a whirlwind romance built entirely on his rebound feelings and my desperate need to be chosen. This time, I'd chosen myself first. Over the next month, Zhang Hao tried multiple times to connect with me. He'd show up at the coffee shop where I studied, sit at my table uninvited, make small talk that always somehow circled back to how beautiful and understanding I was. I was polite but distant, friendly but unavailable. Every time he suggested we hang out, I had other plans. Every time he tried to create intimacy through shared confidences, I redirected to surface topics. "You're different than I thought," he said one afternoon after I'd declined another invitation. "More independent." "I've always been independent. You just never noticed before." "That's not fair. I've always noticed you." "Zhang Hao, I know what you're doing. You're heartbroken over Xiaoyu and looking for someone to make you feel better about it. I'm not interested in being anyone's consolation prize." His face went through shock and anger before settling on wounded dignity. "That's not what this is. I genuinely think you're amazing. You think I'm available and non-threatening. There's a difference." I gathered my books. "I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm just being honest. You're not over Xiaoyu, and until you are, you're not ready to genuinely care about anyone else." "How do you know I'm not over her?" "Because you check your phone every 5 minutes hoping she's texted. Because you engineered running into me here after you saw her post an Instagram story at this coffee shop. Because everything about your behavior screams, I'm trying to prove to someone else that I've moved on, rather than actually moving on. Zhang Hao stared at me. You're very perceptive. I'm observant. And I observe that you're not ready for anything real. I left him sitting there, probably planning his next approach. 3 months later, I'd started a job at a marketing firm and was building a life that had nothing to do with Zhang Hao or the university social circle where he'd been so prominent. I'd made new friends, joined a hiking group, started dating casually. Then Xiao Yu's relationship ended. Her wealthy boyfriend had cheated on her spectacularly publicly, and she'd been devastated. The mutual friends I still had from university kept me updated through social media and gossip. Zhang Hao, predictably, had rushed to comfort her. They'd been seen together constantly. Coffee, dinner, long walks where he listened to her cry and rage about being betrayed. A month after her breakup, Zhang Hao and Xiao Yu started dating officially. Their social media posts were sickeningly sweet. Sunset photos, couple activities, endless declarations of finally finding their way back to each other. My old roommate Lisa called me. Have you seen Zhang Hao's posts? He and Xiao Yu are together. I saw. Aren't you upset? He was so into you last semester. He was into the idea of me. The actual me wasn't what he wanted. I kept my voice neutral. I'm happy for them if they're happy. You're being very mature about this. I'm being realistic. Zhang Hao and I weren't compatible. I'm glad I figured that out before wasting years trying to make something work that never would have. What I didn't say was that I knew exactly how this relationship would unfold. Zhang Hao and Xiao Yu would have an intense honeymoon period where he'd worship her, and she'd bask in being chosen. Then reality would set in. She'd realize she didn't actually love him. She just loved being loved by him. He'd realize she wasn't the fantasy he'd built in his head during their years apart. They'd fight. She'd threaten to leave. He'd beg her to stay, sacrificing more and more of himself to keep her happy. She'd resent him for being weak. He'd resent her for not appreciating his devotion. And when she finally did leave, because she would inevitably, he'd be broken and desperate again, looking for someone to heal him. That someone would not be me. 2 years later, I'd been promoted twice at my marketing firm and was leading major client accounts. I'd dated several people casually but nothing serious. Partly because I was focused on my career, partly because I was still cautious about trusting anyone after what I'd lived through in my previous timeline. I was at an industry networking event when I saw Zhang Hao across the room. He looked older, worn down, with dark circles under his eyes and a slump to his shoulders that hadn't been there before. He saw me and did a double take. Lin Xia. Zhang Hao. How are you? I'm managing. You look great. Really successful and confident. Thank you. I'm doing well. I heard you're killing it at Shin Marketing. One of my colleagues was raving about your campaign for that tech startup. It was a good project. Team effort. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. Zhang Hao looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't figure out how to start. How's Xiao Yu? I asked, knowing the answer would be painful for him. His face fell. We broke up. 6 months ago. She said she never really loved me. That she'd just been scared and lonely after her ex and I was safe and convenient. I'm sorry. That must have been difficult. It destroyed me. I thought she was it, you know? My endgame. The love of my life. And she treated me like I was just temporary. I felt sympathy despite knowing this had been inevitable. People aren't always who we think they are. No, they're not. He looked at me directly. You were right, you know. Back at university. I wasn't over her. I was using you. Or trying to use you. To make myself feel better. You saw through me immediately. I saw what you were going through. I'm glad I didn't get involved. Are you? Glad. He stepped closer. Because I've spent the last 6 months thinking about how different things might have been if I'd been smart enough to choose you instead of chasing her. Warning bells went off in my head. This was familiar. Dangerously familiar. Zhang Hao heartbroken. Zhang Hao romanticizing the woman who'd gotten away. Zhang Hao ready to rebound into something intense and unhealthy. Zhang Hao, I'm not interested in being anyone's second choice or rebound. You wouldn't be. I would be. You're hurt, and you're looking for someone to make you feel better. That's the same pattern as before, just with different timing. I've changed. I've grown. The relationship with Xiaoyu taught me what I actually want. What you actually want is to not feel the pain you're currently feeling. And you think a relationship will fix that. But it won't. I kept my voice gentle but firm. You need to heal on your own before you're ready to genuinely be with someone. And if I do that, if I take time and work on myself, would you consider giving us a chance? I don't know. I'm not putting my life on hold waiting to find out. Over the next year, Zhang Hao did something unexpected. He actually took my advice. He went to therapy. He stopped dating. He focused on his career and his friendships. He started posting on social media about self-improvement and healing rather than relationship drama. Meanwhile, I met someone. His name was David. He was a software engineer, and he was steady and kind in ways Zhang Hao had never been. We dated for 6 months before I felt comfortable enough to introduce him to my friends. Lisa met David and immediately approved. He's perfect for you. Stable, supportive, not dramatic at all. That's the appeal, I agreed. Have you heard Zhang Hao is doing really well? Therapy seems to have really helped him. That's good. Everyone deserves to work through their issues. He asks about you sometimes. Whether you're seeing anyone. I raised an eyebrow. And what do you tell him? The truth. That you're happy and thriving and dating someone great. 3 months later, David and I were at a restaurant celebrating our anniversary when Zhang Hao walked in with a group of friends. Our eyes met across the room. He looked healthy, genuinely happy in a way I'd never seen him before. He approached our table. Linxia, I don't want to interrupt your dinner, but I wanted to say hello. Zhang Hao, this is my boyfriend David. David, this is Zhang Hao, an old friend from university. They shook hands, sized each other up in the way men do. Zhang Hao smiled at David. You're a lucky guy. Linxia is remarkable. I know, David said simply. After Zhang Hao left, David looked at me curiously. That's the guy Lisa told me about? Your friend who had feelings for you. That's him. He still does. Have feelings for you, I mean. Maybe. But that's not my problem to solve. I'm not worried, David said. Just observant. 5 years after the graduation night, I was 28 and engaged to David. We were planning a small wedding, nothing elaborate, just close family and friends. Zhang Hao sent me a message when he saw the engagement announcement. Congratulations. He's lucky to have you. I hope you'll both be very happy. I wrote back. Thank you. I hope you find your own happiness too. A month before the wedding, I was at a coffee shop when Zhang Hao appeared. Not coincidentally, he'd clearly been waiting for me. I'm sorry to ambush you, he said. But I need to say something before you get married, and I might not get another chance. Okay. I was in love with you. Back at university, and honestly for years after. I was just too stupid and too broken to recognize it or act on it appropriately. He held up a hand before I could respond. I'm not telling you this to interfere with your wedding or make things awkward. I'm telling you because I've learned in therapy that I have a pattern of not being honest about my feelings until it's too late. So I'm breaking that pattern now. Zhang Hao, please let me finish. You were right about everything. I wasn't over Xiaoyu. I was looking for someone to fix my pain. I would have used you badly and blamed you for not healing me. You saved both of us by seeing through me and walking away. I'm glad you've done the work to understand that. I have. And I want you to know that if there's a next lifetime, I hope I'm smart enough to see your worth from the beginning. To choose you first instead of last. To love you the way you deserve to be loved. He smiled sadly. But in this lifetime, I'm too late. And that's okay. You're with someone who chose you first. That's how it should be. Thank you for telling me this. And for doing the work to become healthier. Are you happy? Really happy? I am. David is everything I needed and wanted. He chose me immediately and completely. He's never made me feel like a second choice or consolation prize. Good. That's what you deserve. Zhang Hao stood to leave. I won't bother you again. I just needed you to know that you mattered. That you were never the problem, I was. After he left, I sat thinking about my 2 timelines. In one, I'd married Zhang Hao at 25, spent 7 years being his emotional punching bag, and Xiaoyu's substitute, and died at 35 being slapped for interrupting a call with the woman he'd never stopped loving. In this timeline, I'd walked away at 23 and built a life with someone who valued me from day one. The wedding was beautiful, small, intimate, filled with people who genuinely cared about both of us. David's vows made me cry, not because they were elaborate, but because they were simple and true. Linxia, I choose you. Not because you were available or convenient or second best, but because you're exactly who I want. Today and every day after. That night, lying next to my new husband, I thought about the life I'd escaped. The slap that had killed me in my previous timeline. The years of being diminished and dismissed. The death that had been both accident and inevitability. And I thought about Zhang Hao, who'd finally done the work to become someone capable of actually loving another person, but had done it too late to have me. That was the shocking truth of this timeline. When I walked away, Zhang Hao had eventually become the man I'd needed him to be. But by then, I'd already found someone better. 6 months into my marriage, I was pregnant. David was ecstatic, already planning nursery colors and reading parenting books. We were at our first ultrasound when my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered. Hello. Linxia? This is Zhang Hao's mother. My blood ran cold. Mrs. Zhang. Is something wrong? It's Hao. He was in an accident. A car accident. He's in surgery now, but they said to call people who matter to him. I found your number in his phone marked as an emergency contact. I'll be there in 20 minutes. David drove me to the hospital without question. When we arrived, Mrs. Zhang was in the waiting room crying. Several of Zhang Hao's friends were there, looking shell-shocked. What happened? I asked. He was driving, one friend said. His phone rang. Some woman named Xiaoyu. He answered it while driving and the friend stopped. There was a truck. It hit his driver's side. The exact same accident that had killed me in my previous timeline. But this time, Zhang Hao had been driving alone. This time, there was no wife to slap for objecting to the call. Is he going to survive? I asked. They don't know. He has severe head trauma, broken ribs, internal bleeding. We waited 4 hours before a surgeon emerged. The surgery went well, but he's critical. The next 24 hours will tell us if he's going to make it. Mrs. Zhang grabbed my hand. He talked about you. Said you were the one who got away. Said he'd been a fool. I'm sorry this happened to him. Will you stay? He'd want you here. I looked at David, who nodded. We stayed in the waiting room all night. Around 4 a.m., a nurse came to say Zhang Hao was awake and asking for me. I shouldn't, I said. I'm not family. Please, Mrs. Zhang begged. He was very insistent. David squeezed my hand. Go. I'll be here. Zhang Hao looked terrible. Bandaged head, tubes everywhere, monitors beeping steadily. But he was conscious. Linxia. You came. Your mother called. She said it was serious. It is serious. They said I might not make it through the night. He tried to smile but winced. Ironic, isn't it? All that therapy, all that work on myself, and I'm going to die anyway. You're not going to die. You're too stubborn. Maybe. But just in case. He reached for my hand with his uninjured one. I need to know something. If I'd changed sooner, if I'd been healthy when we met, would you have chosen me? I thought about this carefully. About my 2 timelines. About who Zhang Hao had been and who he'd become. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe. But that's not how it happened. You weren't ready when I needed you to be. And by the time you were ready, I'd already found someone who was. That's fair. He closed his eyes. The call. The one that caused the accident. It was Xiaoyu. She wanted to tell me she's engaged. Asked if I'd be happy for her. And what did you say? I said yes. And I meant it. Because I am happy for her. I'm not in love with her anymore. He opened his eyes. But answering that call while driving was stupid. Old habits. Old patterns. Even after all that therapy, when she called, I still answered immediately without thinking. That's what killed me in my previous life, I said without thinking. Zhang Hao's eyes widened. What? I realized what I'd said. Nothing. Just, Be more careful if you survive this. Previous life? Lincia, what are you talking about? I shouldn't tell him. It would sound insane. But he was possibly dying, and some part of me felt he deserved to know. We were married. In another timeline. For 7 years. You hit me for objecting when Xiao Yu called while you were driving. The accident killed me, but you survived. I died at 35, never having been truly loved by you. Zhang Hao stared at me. That's impossible. I know. But it's true. I was reborn on graduation night. I walked away from you before you could trap me in that marriage. And you eventually changed, but too late. If this is true, if you lived through that. God, Lincia. I'm so sorry. Don't be. That timeline taught me to value myself. To walk away from people who couldn't love me properly. To choose myself first. Did I really hit you? You did. Not just once. Many times over the years. Because I was never who you wanted me to be. Zhang Hao started crying. I would never. You would. You did. But not in this timeline. In this timeline, I left before you could hurt me. We sat in silence while he processed this. Finally he said, thank you. For what? For saving both of us. Because if what you're saying is true, that version of me was a monster. And you stopped me from becoming that by refusing to enable it. Zhang Hao survived. He spent 2 months in the hospital, then 6 months in physical therapy. During his recovery, he had a lot of time to think about what I'd told him. When he was finally mobile again, he asked to meet me for coffee. David came with me, sitting at a nearby table but giving us space. I've been thinking about what you said. Zhang Hao started. About the other timeline. I can't prove it's true, but I can't prove it's not true either. And the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. How so? Because I recognize that man you described. The one who would hit his wife for interrupting Xiao Yu's call. I recognize him because I was that man, just barely controlled. All the anger, all the resentment, all the obsession. It was there. You just never let me direct it at you. That's perceptive. Therapy helped. So did nearly dying. But mostly it helped that you walked away when you did. You showed me I couldn't just have whatever I wanted through persistence and manipulation. That some women would see through me and refuse to participate. I'm glad the lesson stuck. I'm dating someone now. Her name is May. She's kind and patient, but she doesn't take my crap. When I start falling into old patterns, trying to control, trying to manipulate, she calls me on it immediately. That's good. You need that. I wanted you to know that if there was another timeline, if I hurt you the way you described, I'm genuinely sorry. That man doesn't exist anymore. You made sure of it by refusing to create him. After Zhang Hao left, David came over. That was intense. What did he mean about another timeline? I told David everything. About my previous life, about the abuse, about the death. I expected skepticism or concern. Instead, David just said, that explains a lot about you. Why you were so cautious when we started dating. Why you set such firm boundaries. Why you won't tolerate any hint of controlling behavior. You believe me? I believe you experienced something that gave you that knowledge. Whether it was actual rebirth or vivid premonition or intuition so strong it felt like memory. Does it matter? The result is the same. You protected yourself from a dangerous situation. 10 years after the graduation night, I was 33 with 2 children and a thriving career. Zhang Hao had married May, who'd indeed proven to be exactly the kind of partner he needed. Loving but no nonsense, supportive but not enabling. We'd become genuine friends. The kind of friendship that's only possible between people who've done the work to be healthy and honest with each other. At a mutual friend's wedding, Zhang Hao and May sat at our table. May was pregnant with their first child, glowing and happy. Zhang Hao looked at her with genuine love. Not obsession, not fantasy, but real love. You two look good together. I told them. We are, May said. Though he tells me you're responsible for the fact that we work. How so? Zhang Hao smiled. I tell everyone you're the woman who saved my life by refusing to date me. That's a strange way to put it. But accurate. If you'd said yes when I was broken and desperate, I would have destroyed both our lives. You said no, forced me to face myself, And eventually I became someone capable of having this. He gestured to his pregnant wife. So thank you. 12 years after graduation night. The exact amount of time I'd been married to Zhang Hao in my previous timeline. I was 35 years old. The age I'd died before. I was alive, healthy, happily married, watching my children play in our backyard while David grilled dinner. That evening, David found me standing alone in the kitchen, tears running down my face. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I'm 35. This is the age I died in my other life. And instead of being dead, I'm here. With you. With our children. Living a life I almost didn't have. David held me while I cried. You chose this. You chose yourself when it would have been easier to accept whatever you were offered. That choice saved your life. He was right. In my previous timeline, I'd died because I'd accepted being Zhang Hao's second choice, his emotional punching bag, his substitute for the woman he actually wanted. I'd believed that sacrifice meant love, that endurance meant strength, that staying meant winning. I'd been wrong. In this timeline, I'd walked away. And Zhang Hao had been shocked. Shocked that I'd seen through him. Shocked that I'd chosen myself over him. Shocked that his usual tactics didn't work. That shock had saved both of us. Saved me from dying. Saved him from becoming a man who'd kill his wife over his first love's phone call. The butterfly effect of one woman saying no, when everyone expected her to say yes. 15 years after graduation, Zhang Hao invited us to his daughter's second birthday party. It was there, watching our families interact, our children playing together, our spouses laughing at shared jokes, that Zhang Hao pulled me aside. Do you ever think about that other timeline? The one where we married? Sometimes. Usually as a reminder of what I escaped. I think about it often. About the man I would have become. The pain I would have caused. He looked at his daughter. That little girl wouldn't exist if you'd married me. Neither would May. This entire life, my good life, only exists because you said no. You would have found your way eventually. Maybe. But at what cost? He turned to me. I know this might sound strange, but I'm grateful you died in that other timeline. What? Because your death must have been devastating enough to give you the knowledge to change things. If you'd lived through all those years of abuse but never died, would you have been reborn with the determination to walk away? Or would you have just continued accepting it? I'd never thought about it that way. You're saying my death was necessary for my rebirth. I'm saying your suffering gave you wisdom. And that wisdom saved us both. He smiled. So thank you for dying so you could live better. For both of us. That night, lying next to David, I thought about Zhang Hao's words. About how my death in one timeline had led to life, real life, healthy life, in another. I thought about the slap that had killed me. The phone call that had mattered more than my safety. The man who'd hated me for not being someone else. And I thought about the choice I'd made at 23 to walk away from all of it. David. I whispered. Are you awake? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just wanted to say thank you. For what? For being the kind of man who never made me question my worth. Who never made me fight for basic respect. Who chose me first and kept choosing me every day after. David pulled me closer. That's not something to thank me for. That's baseline behavior. That's the bare minimum of what love should be. I know. But I also know what it looks like when someone doesn't even give you that minimum. And I'm grateful I found you instead. 20 years after graduation, I was 43 years old. Zhang Hao and I were at a university reunion, laughing about how young and stupid we'd all been. Someone asked the inevitable question. Did you two ever date? Everyone always thought you'd end up together. Zhang Hao and I looked at each other and smiled. No, I said. We were never right for each other. Best decision we never made, Zhang Hao added. Later, when the party was winding down, Zhang Hao found me on the balcony looking at the stars. Do you ever wonder what happened to that other timeline? He asked. The one where we married and you died? I think it just stopped existing when I made different choices. Like a path I didn't take. Or maybe it still exists somewhere. A universe where I killed you and destroyed myself and never learned or grew or changed. He shuddered. That's a horrifying thought. It is. But it's also a reminder that our choices matter. One different choice, me walking away that graduation night, and everything changed. For both of us. For both of us, I agreed. As I drove home that night, I thought about the two Zhang Haos. The one who'd hit me and the one who'd thanked me. The one who'd killed me and the one who'd credited me with saving his life. They were the same person, just shaped by different circumstances. By different choices. In one timeline, I'd enabled his worst self by accepting his treatment. In this timeline, I'd prevented his worst self by refusing to participate in it. That was the shocking truth no one talked about. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to let them hurt you. Sometimes walking away saves not just yourself, but the person you're leaving. Zhang Hao had become a good man. Not because I'd stayed and suffered and tried to fix him, but because I'd left and forced him to fix himself. And I'd become a whole person, not despite walking away from him, but because of it. 25 years after graduation, I was 48 years old, watching my eldest daughter graduate from the same university I'd attended. She was confident and fierce and completely unwilling to tolerate anyone's nonsense, traits I'd made sure to cultivate in her. Zhang Hao was there too, watching his own daughter graduate in the same ceremony. Our families sat together, 3 generations of the choices we'd made, and the lives those choices had created. After the ceremony, our daughters, who'd become friends despite their parents' complicated history, asked us to take a photo together. Our parents who almost dated. My daughter joked to Zhang Hao's daughter. Dodged a bullet there, his daughter joked back. 2 bullets, I corrected. And we all laughed because it was true and funny and ultimately fine because we'd both moved on to better things. That evening, I stood in the exact spot where I'd walked away from Zhang Hao 25 years earlier. Where I'd left the ballroom rather than dance with a heartbroken man who wanted to use me to forget someone else. The choice I'd made in that moment had rippled forward through time, creating this life, this family, this happiness. In my previous timeline, I'd been dead for 13 years by now. My daughter from that marriage would have been 15, probably traumatized from witnessing years of abuse before her mother's death. In this timeline, my daughter was 23, graduating with honors, heading off to law school to become an advocate for domestic violence victims. A career choice she'd made after I'd told her, in age-appropriate ways, about my previous life and the importance of recognizing danger early. The shocking thing wasn't that I'd walked away. The shocking thing was how much that simple act had changed, how many lives it had improved, how many futures it had created, how much pain it had prevented. Zhang Hao found me standing there, remembering, always, regretting, never. Me neither. He smiled. You know, May and I were talking last night about alternate timelines. About how if things had gone differently, if you'd said yes that night, we'd probably both be miserable or dead or divorced. Probably all 3. Instead we got this. 2 healthy marriages. 4 successful kids. Careers we love. Genuine friendship. He shook his head. All because you walked away. All because we both did the work after I walked away, I corrected. I can't take all the credit. Nor all the blame for that other timeline. We were both responsible for what happened there. But in this timeline we both made better choices. That's worth celebrating. As the sun set over the campus, I thought about beginnings and endings. About how the end of one thing, a potential relationship with Zhang Hao, had been the beginning of everything good in my life. David found me there, took my hand. Ready to go home? Always. As we walked to the car, I looked back one last time at the ballroom where everything had changed 25 years ago. Where I'd made the choice that had saved my life. In my previous timeline, Zhang Hao had slapped me for his first love's call. I'd known then, in that final moment before death, that he'd hated me for not being Xiaoyu, hated me for existing in the space she should have occupied, hated me for being a constant reminder of what he couldn't have. In this timeline, I'd walked away before he could develop that hatred, and in doing so, I'd given both of us the chance to become people who could actually love. Him with May, me with David. The shocking truth wasn't that Zhang Hao had changed. The shocking truth was that he'd only been able to change because I'd refused to let him destroy me first. That night, As I fell asleep next to David in our home filled with 25 years of genuine love and partnership, I had a dream about my previous life. About the woman I'd been, desperate, diminished, dying for scraps of affection from a man who'd never valued her. In the dream, that version of me asked, was it worth it? All the pain, all the suffering, all the death, was it worth it to get here? And I answered, it made me who I am. It taught me to choose myself. It gave me the wisdom to build this life instead of accepting that one. So yes, it was worth it. When I woke, David was watching me. You were smiling in your sleep, he said. I was dreaming about the woman I used to be, the one who died so I could live. Do you miss her? No. I honor her, because her suffering taught me to demand better. Her death gave me life. Her pain gave me wisdom. I kissed him. She died so I could be here with you. That's the best thing she ever did. 30 years after graduation, I was 53 years old when Zhang Hao had a heart attack. He survived, but it was serious enough that it made him reflective. He wrote me a letter. Lin Xia, I've been thinking about mortality and legacy and what we leave behind. If I'd died in that hospital bed 30 years ago, my legacy would have been potential wasted and people hurt. If I'd died in the car accident 15 years ago, my legacy would have been a man who'd started to change, but hadn't finished the work. But if I die today, my legacy is a good marriage, successful children, meaningful work, and genuine friendships. All of that exists because you said no when I needed you to. Thank you for having the courage to walk away. It gave me the chance to become someone worth staying with, just not with you. And that's perfect. With gratitude, Zhang Hao. I wrote back, Zhang Hao, your legacy isn't what I gave you by leaving. Your legacy is what you built after I left. You did the work. You made the changes. You became the man you are. I just declined to participate in preventing that growth. We're both exactly where we're supposed to be, in separate, healthy lives that only exist because we didn't try to force a connection that would have destroyed us both. With appreciation for the friendship we built from the ashes of what we didn't, Lin Xia. When I was 60 years old, David and I renewed our vows in a small ceremony with our children and grandchildren present. Zhang Hao and Mei were there too, part of the extended family of choice we'd built over the decades. During the reception, someone asked me what the secret was to a long, happy marriage. Choose someone who chooses you first, I said. Not second, not eventually, not after they've exhausted other options. First. And then keep choosing each other every day after. That's it, they asked. That's the secret. That's it. It sounds simple, but it requires knowing your worth enough to walk away from people who don't recognize it. Later that evening, I stood with Zhang Hao on the balcony, a deliberate echo of that conversation we'd had 40 years earlier at our university reunion. 40 years, he said, since the night that didn't happen. The dance we never had. The relationship we never started. The disaster we never created. We laughed, because time and distance and decades of healthy choices had made it funny instead of painful. I need to tell you something, Zhang Hao said. Something I've never told anyone else. Okay. Sometimes I have dreams about that other timeline. The one where you married me. And in those dreams, I see myself hitting you, screaming at you, destroying you piece by piece. And I wake up horrified because I recognize that man. I could have been him. So easily. But you weren't. Only because you didn't let me be. You forced me to face myself by refusing to be my victim. That's the most loving thing anyone has ever done for me. Refusing to love me when I was unlovable. I thought about this. About how we define love. About how my previous life had taught me that sometimes love means saying no. Zhang Hao, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think about her? Shall you? Do you ever wonder what would have happened if she'd chosen you back then? No. Because I know what would have happened. I would have worshipped her. She would have grown to despise me for it, and we'd both have been miserable. She didn't love me, she loved being loved by me. There's a difference. And Mei? Does she love you or just love being loved by you? She loves me. The actual me. Flaws and all. Just like David loves you. Just like we both deserved all along. but didn't know how to find until we learned what we actually needed. As the party wound down and guests began leaving, I stood with David watching Zhang Hao and Mei drive away, their grandchildren waving from the back seat. Strange friendship, David observed. The man who almost destroyed you and the woman who saved herself before he could. Not strange. Necessary. We both needed to know that people can change, that growth is possible, that the worst versions of ourselves aren't inevitable. Are you glad you knew him? I'm glad I knew both versions of him. The broken one taught me what to avoid. The healed one taught me that avoiding it was right. When I was 65 years old, Zhang Hao died. Heart attack in his sleep. Quick, painless, surrounded by family. At his funeral, Mei asked me to speak. Zhang Hao and I were friends for 42 years, I began. But we were almost something else. Something that would have destroyed us both. Instead, we became something better. Evidence that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Zhang Hao spent his life becoming a man worthy of love. Not my love. He was never meant for me, but genuine love from people who saw him clearly and chose him anyway. He succeeded. That's his legacy. After the funeral, Mei pulled me aside. He told me about the other timeline. About what you said in the hospital after his accident. That you'd been married to him in another life and he'd killed you. I probably shouldn't have told him that. No, I'm glad you did. Because it explains so much about him. Why he was so committed to therapy. Why he was so vigilant about his anger. Why he never took me for granted. She gripped my hands. You gave me a good husband by refusing to marry a bad one. Thank you. 5 years after Zhang Hao's death, I was 70 years old and writing my memoirs when I came to the chapter about him. I wrote, there was a man I almost married. In another timeline, another life, I did marry him. He destroyed me so thoroughly that I died believing I deserved it. But something, fate, chance, divine intervention, gave me the knowledge to change that outcome. I walked away, and in doing so, I saved both of us. He became the man he was meant to be. I became the woman I was meant to be. And we both found the love we deserved with other people. This is a story about how sometimes the greatest love is the one you walk away from. My editor read it and said, this is your most powerful chapter. But readers might not believe the other timeline part. They'll think it's metaphor. Let them think that. The truth doesn't need to be believed to be true. The book was published when I was 71. It became a bestseller, particularly popular among women in unhealthy relationships who recognized their own situations in my story. I received thousands of letters. Women who'd walked away from men who hit them. Women who'd refused to be second choice. Women who'd chosen themselves when everyone told them to choose someone else. One letter stood out. Ms. Lin, I was engaged to a man who reminded me of your Zhang Hao, charming but broken, attentive but controlling, loving but violent. I read your book 3 weeks before my wedding. I called it off. My family was furious. My friends thought I was crazy. But I knew I was making the right choice. 2 years later, I met someone who chose me first. We just got engaged. Thank you for writing your truth. It gave me permission to live mine. I wrote back. You saved yourself. I just showed you it was possible. The courage was always yours. When I was 75 years old, David died. Peacefully in his sleep, after 52 years of marriage. At his funeral, I spoke about the difference between him and Zhang Hao. David chose me immediately and completely. There was never a moment where I wondered if I was good enough, if I was his first choice, if he wished I was someone else. He saw me clearly and loved what he saw. That's the gift he gave me, the certainty that I was valued exactly as I was. Zhang Hao taught me what I didn't want. David taught me what I deserved. Both lessons were necessary, but only one made me happy. After David's death, Mei, now 80 herself, came to visit me. We're the last ones, she said. Everyone else from that generation is gone. Not quite everyone, but close enough. Do you think they're together now? David and Zhang Hao, talking about us. I smiled. If there's an afterlife, I imagine David thanking Zhang Hao for being too broken to keep me, and Zhang Hao thanking David for being whole enough to deserve me. And what are we doing while they're having that conversation? Living. Because that's what we do. We survive, we grow, we choose ourselves, we build good lives from the lessons of bad relationships. When I was 80 years old, I gave a talk at a university, the same university where I'd walked away from Zhang Hao 57 years earlier. A young woman raised her hand. You talk about walking away like it was easy. But it's not easy. There are consequences, judgments, social costs. You're right. It's not easy. It was terrifying. Everyone thought I was making a mistake. Everyone said I was too picky, too demanding, too unwilling to compromise. But here's what I learned. The consequences of walking away are temporary. The consequences of staying are permanent. I'd rather face temporary discomfort than permanent damage. But what if you're wrong? What if you walk away from someone who could have changed? Then they'll change for someone else. And you'll find someone who doesn't need to change to treat you well. You're not responsible for another person's growth. You're responsible for your own safety. Another hand went up. Do you regret the years you spent in that first timeline? The abuse, the pain, the death? I regret that version of me suffered. But I don't regret the wisdom it gave me. Without that pain, I wouldn't have known to walk away when I got a second chance. So no, I don't regret it. I honor it. That woman's suffering bought my freedom. When I was 85 years old, my eldest daughter, now 62 herself, asked me a question. Mom, do you really believe you lived another timeline? That you were actually married to Zhang Hao and he killed you? I believe I had knowledge I shouldn't have had. Whether that came from literal rebirth or some other source. Does it matter? The result was the same. I knew he was dangerous and I acted on that knowledge. It matters to me. Because if you were actually reborn, if you actually died and came back, what does that mean about death? About consciousness? About reality? It means that sometimes we get second chances. Not everyone, maybe not most people, but sometimes. And when we do, we should use them wisely. Did you? I walked away from a man who would have killed me. I built a life with a man who loved me completely. I raised children who know their worth. I helped hundreds of women escape dangerous situations. Yes, daughter. I used my second chance wisely. When I was 90 years old, I was in hospice. My children and grandchildren surrounded me, but I'd asked for a moment alone. I was thinking about my two lives. About the Lin Xia who'd died at 35, broken and alone. About the Lin Xia who'd lived to 90, loved and fulfilled. They were both me. Both versions existed in my memory, in my experience. The suffering and the joy. The death and the life. A nurse came in to check my vitals. Are you comfortable, Mrs. Lin? Very. Thank you. Your family will be back soon. Is there anything you need? No. I have everything I need. I've had everything I needed for 67 years. After she left, I closed my eyes and thought about Zhang Hao. About the slap that had killed me in one timeline. About the dance we'd never had in this one. I wondered if he was waiting for me somewhere. The healthy version, the healed version, ready to be the friend he'd become instead of the husband he'd almost been. Or maybe David was waiting, ready to continue the love that had defined this life. Or maybe there was nothing, just the quiet end of consciousness, the cessation of suffering and joy alike. It didn't matter. Because I'd lived. Really lived. Not just survived, but thrived. I'd been given knowledge of my own death, and used it to choose life. I'd been shown my worst possible future, and refused to live it. That was the shocking truth of my story. Walking away hadn't broken Zhang Hao. It had saved him. And it had saved me. My children came back into the room. My daughter took my hand. Mom, are you okay? I'm perfect. I'm thinking about how lucky I am. How grateful I am for every choice I made, every boundary I set, every time I chose myself. Even the hard choices? Especially the hard choices. Those were the ones that mattered most. As my family gathered around me, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all of them existing because I'd walked away from Zhang Hao 57 years ago, I felt complete peace. In my previous life, I'd died with regrets, with unspoken words, with a life unlived. In this life, I'd lived fully, loved deeply, chosen wisely, and when I closed my eyes for the final time, It wasn't with bitterness or pain or fear. It was with gratitude. For the dance I'd never danced. For the marriage I'd never had. For the slap I'd never received. For the death I'd never died. For the life I'd lived instead. For walking away when everyone told me to stay. For shocking him by choosing myself. That choice had changed everything. And I would make it again, in every lifetime, in every reality, in every possible universe. Because some loves are meant to be walked away from. And some lives are only possible because you had the courage to leave.